Hello there, everyone. We are back again after a bit of a break. The break has been for a number of reasons. One that I know this is terrible and incredibly lazy of me, but it did go away for a long weekend. And then Ralph, of course, had the best excuse of all. And what did you do, Ralph?
Yes, I have actually had a knee operation. And for that reason, I wasn't able to attend last week. Indeed, I'm going to wait for an outpouring of sympathy from our audience because I'm clearly in a lot of pain and full of self-pity. And during the episodes today, I plan to share some of that self-pity with everybody.
Marvelous. That's good.
Sorry, I shouldn't laugh, should I?
We're all looking forward to
the effect.
Yeah, we're all looking forward to a bit of self-pity. So anyway, talking of self-pity, we've got some great topics to talk about this week because let's face it, this is bad news delivered with a smile. Generally speaking, yes, with panache. Yeah. So anyway, we're going to talk about two topics this week. We'll talk about energy conservation, and we're going to be talking about cost cutting because of all the stuff that has been going on recently. So let's kick off then. I mean, it was very interesting to hear with regard to energy that the IMF, the geniuses at the IMF, said that the advice to Europeans was to just pass on all of the price rises to consumers because it means that it will incentivize consumers to conserve energy. Whereas, of course, until you're confronted with a ridiculous bill, you won't, of course, try to reduce your bills and outgoings, etc. But what did you make of that then, Ralph?
Yes, I was stunned, I have to say. You know, on top of the pain which I feel from my knee operation, did I mention that? Okay, moving on. On top of the pain that we all feel due to increasing energy bills and cost of living expenses going up everywhere you look, the IMF is now actively consulting companies to please pass the cost on to the consumer in brackets, as if they wouldn't do this anyway, brackets closed. Don't really need the IMF to tell them. And the cited reason for that is quite frankly ludicrous. I mean, there is no need to incentivize anybody to save money. Or to enter into any sort of mechanism they can think of to reduce their energy bills. Trust us. We're going to do that. We're going to do that just ourselves. So it's a nice opener for this. I mean, sometimes you do wonder what the geniuses with PhDs in economics and other fields have to offer to the to the
real world,
to the general population in the real world. That's right, exactly.
So I mean, absolute genius advice from the IMF there. So obviously bringing that down to a more practical level. Energy prices are expected to be very high for a long time. This is not just for a few months, etc. I mean, I was thinking that really what needs to be done, I think that governments need to get involved because I don't think that companies can just pass this on. I think governments need to get involved. They need to maybe have some kind of plan to soften the blow, maybe for the next 3 to 6 months, so that so it gets at least phased in rather than, okay, everyone, here we go. Everyone's bills are just going to go up by a ridiculous percentage and good luck. And by the way, this is your incentive to go and get some solar panels. I mean, it's just, yes. I mean, I think that the government, it needs government level support, I think. And I mean, I can't I can't predict what that's going to look like, especially in the UK, given the fact that we don't know who the Prime Minister is going to be, what sort of promises they're going to end up making, and all that kind of thing. So anyway, I think it needs to be done at a governmental level, but at the same time, there are going to be measures that people can take, and there are going to be companies and industries that actually will benefit. I mean, we're talking obviously the energy companies are going to benefit, but just looking, broadening it out from there, what other areas do you think will be able to benefit, Ralph?
Yeah, I just want to echo what you said on the governments. I mean, I think in a perhaps in a slightly paradoxical or unintended way, the need for governments currently, this is European wide, to woo their voters is going to be positive from the point of view of the voters, because they're probably going to be given some sort of rescue scheme. Because if you look at this country, you mentioned it, when we have the run between Liz Truss and Sunak, and Liz Truss is already basically approaching the run in a reasonably populist way, I would say. The unintended positive outcome from this might well be that she will have to promise the people in the UK to some sort of incentive scheme, some sort of support. And I think this will happen. And it will happen in the same way in France, because there we have Macron also clearly having to give something to the population there, as he has lost his majority in parliament. We see the same in Germany and Italy. So I think that it is actually reasonable to expect the governments in European countries to give some support. And this can, of course, be done. Again, we've talked about this before. This is by no means original. This can be done by placing specific taxes on the winners from the situation, the energy companies, windfall taxes, and redistributing this in the form of monetary support. So that is something which I think is going to come politically. And this will not be enough, however. And so to answer your question, yes, there will be some. Everybody will sort of think about ingenious schemes to soften the blow, from high energy bills in particular. And this can be done in two ways, or maybe in more ways than two, but there are two ways which I can think of. First is to use energy more efficiently, basically switch off everything in the home which uses electricity. We come back to that. And second, of course, to basically just, and this is going to sound ridiculous, but we've been there before, to just basically turn down the heat in your home and just wear warm clothes. And I know this is sounding ridiculous, but it is a way to do this. I mean, if I can save on the electricity consumption of my home, and all I have to do to support this is to wear a jumper or maybe some ski apparel or mountaineering apparel, then I know, but then I will do this.
So the days of you walking around in your pants are coming to an end, at least for this, at least until the recession looks like it's that looks like it's all over.
I knew I shouldn't have gone there.
Yeah. So yes, I mean, obviously the demise of walking around in pants is sad, of course. But yeah, I mean, I do think that concessions are going to be made, and actually, if we take that a step further in terms of what sort of industries and companies are going to do well from this. I mean, obviously the sort of energy companies and say mining companies. I mean, we saw Glencore, for instance, has done incredibly well. That's mainly been on the back of coal and its investments in coal and stuff like that. But so I mean, I think we have said this before. So clothing retailers that sell jumpers, thermal thermal clothing. So most apparel companies will be selling jumpers. So I bet M&S, for instance, I'm sure they'll do a roaring trade. I would have thought Uniqlo would do very well as well, because they do a good line in jumpers. I mean, I don't, they seem all right. They do them in loads of colours and stuff like that. And I would imagine, they also do a very popular line in thermal underwear, or affordable thermal underwear, and then maybe outdoor goods retailers. They'll probably do well as well, as will probably eBay. I mean, you may well be able to buy. I mean, I don't know. Would you want to buy thermal underwear on eBay? I mean, maybe you would. I would go for natural rather than man-made, because man-made after a while tends to how should you put it?
Thank you.
Hold the yes,
you shouldn't at all, but you will.
Old odor.
Yes. Oh, thank you. Now I have that in my head. In addition to my knee pain. Right. So very good. I mean, definitely. I guess there are some short-term and longer-term effects. I wouldn't be surprised at all if the shorter-term effects would be of the nature which you just listed. In particular, I'm quite a fan of the idea to actually go to a outdoor sports retailer like Snow and Rock and just buy underwear. I know these are sort of reasonably expensive, but it costs like 60 quid, or maybe it costs 70 quid. But then you've got them basically for the winter, 140, 180 quid investment, and that should actually see you through the winter. And again, I keep thinking how weird that sounds. I mean, we are in the UK. We are not in other country. Which may have been on the news for this hardship over the last decade or so. But this is the time we live in. And so I think that's going to be some of the shorter term impacts of this. eBay is an interesting one because yes, the side of it, I mean, one side of it is cost reduction, which we've talked about now a little bit. But the other one is, of course, what can you monetize? What in your household is there that you rarely ever use? Can you actually put it on eBay? Can you turn it into some cash? And so I think that the electronic trading platforms or commodity trading platforms of this nature are going to do well also.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see that, and I think that there will be other areas that can do well as well. I mean, we were talking about this earlier, weren't we? In terms of the whole. I mean, this is the short. We're talking about the short term now, right? So in terms of the short term, getting the the clothing and that kind of thing. And I might as well just say on the eBay side of things, is that because of the higher costs, we're always hearing about the squeeze on household budgets, and that will mean that people will want to cut costs where they can. And I think that companies like eBay, any kind of online auctioning site, should do quite well, because I think that a lot of people will be going through their wardrobes and everything that they can to try to find items that will sell on these platforms. And on the other side, people may well try to look at things on eBay to save themselves some money. So
yes, exactly.
So I mean, there's that as well. But I mean, you were talking, weren't you, about more sort of longer term, or mid to longer term areas that could do quite well. So
yeah, that's the other. I mean, for example, eBay. I've got some skateboards here which I no longer need because I'm in pain after my knee operation. I might have mentioned, but so that's the sort of thing which people might do. Moving on, the longer term. Yes, actually, the longer term is quite interesting because, again, the longer term, I think, resides in two industries or in two sectors. One is, again, your home, where you might well find that it will pay off to be forewarned and forearmed, so to speak, for next winter. So those who can afford to repair their home might well increase the levels of insulation in their home, maybe put double glazing in if they can afford to do this, or if it's feasible. Perhaps put solar panels on the roofs of houses if that possibility. And so I think that is an industry which is going to respond positively to increased demand as a result of the crisis we're in. This demand is not going to, I don't believe, surface necessarily short term, by which I mean next winter, this winter coming, but it might actually come along during the next year. So that is one side. But then, of course, we are already talking about industry now, which is going to benefit. And I think it's the entire industry of sustainable energy provision. Wind farms, I think, are already upgrading existing wind turbines offshore, fitting bigger blades and increasing the height of the windmills.
Yeah.
There will be an increased investment in research in better, more efficient energy provision from these sources. There will be more wind farms, just simply, and solar panels, and of course, to an extent, sustainable, although this has to be used with a little bit more caution in this context. Nuclear is also it's certainly a non-fossil based energy source. That's going to be something which is going to be incentivized. So I think, in addition to whatever the government might actually do for the private sector, is the wrong word, for the citizenry of a country, the government is also going to incentivize investment and research into these fields. That's the longest term, but even there, on a scale of maybe the next 5 to 10 years, I think that's very likely. That's the window where all European countries need to emancipate themselves from Russia in terms of energy policy, and that is the time window over which I would expect the industries and businesses which are operating in that sector to benefit.
That's right, and I think so. Anything along those lines. So any kind of the materials that are involved in that. Again, anything on that side of things will also benefit. But yes, I mean, I think that there will be a lot of that going on. I mean, we'll also see industries trying to conserve their energy as well. I mean, we've seen. I mean, I thought it was quite interesting, to see that a retailer like Carrefour of France is doing is switching on their chicken rotisseries earlier to take advantage of the cheaper tariff, dimming the lights. But we've got there are companies. There are other companies in the retail space like Iceland, whose electricity bills are going through the roof because they have freezers on all the time, and they have loads more freezers per square foot of retail space than your average supermarket. So. I think that they are going to have a lot of problems. I think so yes, but yeah. I mean, are there any other areas, do you think?
Well, yes, I think that there is an existing trend which is going to be heightened. People are going to go back to the office because the offices are heated. My home may not be, or at least I can then afford not to heat my home. I mean, if I still had an office, of course, I'd like to do this as well, but I'm unconscious currently, so I can't really walk. But yes.
Have you had an operation recently?
Well, funny to ask.
Yeah.
Have I mentioned this? Yes, on my knee, actually. Yeah, it's hurting.
Oh, really?
Okay. Yeah. Yes. Cool. Anyway, back to office. Now, this again does sound ludicrous, but I've mentioned it before in the podcast. There was this tragic story of the pensioner in the north of England somewhere who chose to spend, this is last winter, who chose to spend days on public buses because these were heated, whereas she could not afford to heat her home. Now, this tragic as though it may be, I think we are going to see similar behavioral patterns becoming more normal as people are just going to take advantage of a heated office. I mean, why wouldn't you? And that is, I think, also something which is going to happen. So there is a lot of there are lots of effects from the current situation which are going to permeate many layers of society. Behavioral patterns as people go back to office, and all the other aspects we talked about.
Yeah, I mean it is very difficult at the moment, and it will get progressively more difficult as we head into the colder months. And it's not just us; it's everyone really. Certainly in Europe. And so and again, so much of this kind of depends on what's going to happen with Ukraine, what's happening with Russia. How many more geopolitical tensions can you take all at the same time? It's all very difficult stuff. I mean, I think that it's difficult really to talk about anything else at the moment because that's basically what was going on all the time. And I would say that that this certainly this week it's been quite interesting because Ralph and I we talk about this before we come on air, and saying that really actually there wasn't a tremendous amount to talk about in this episode that we haven't either covered before or that was just kind of like an extension of things that we have already talked about. But I think that it's good to talk about this, and we have to talk about this because it's very real. It is there are very real repercussions. These things are, what we are trying to do with, in this conversation is to try to identify areas which may win, because the thing is that it's quite easy to say who's going to suffer. So it's always a good idea, because with absolutely everything, there's always going to be winners and losers. So that's obviously what we're trying to talk about here. But I mean, I don't know. I think we're going to probably wrap up a bit early today, for in terms of the usual length of podcast, whatever you want to call this. But I mean, is there anything else you'd like to add, Ralph?
No, I just wanted to echo that as well, because we live in a time where obviously there are certain dynamics which are unfolding, and these dynamics are unfolding for the longer term. Several years in the future, we are still going to be dealing with the cost of living crisis, hopefully in a situation where we're going to see inflation waning, but that is still going to be a dominant feature of our lives in the medium term. Let's call it 5 years. And our podcasts are, of course, also embedded in a developing situation. So I would say, in terms of the commercial awareness, which we, both of us, are going to develop currently, it is not necessarily that every time we come on air, every week, there's going to be a new dynamic which is crystallizing. These are going to be the same dynamics, and one needs to sort of touch base and see whether the data points support a particular analysis which we have offered or which somebody might think about, and is how I certainly look at the news. And so currently I'm finding that some of the dynamics which we have talked about in the past are potentially unfolding as we were expecting them to.
That's right. So there we go.
Right.
So it's brilliant to have you back in the driving seat, Ralph,
after my operation.
After your operation, indeed.
Which hurt.
I'm sure it did.
Sorry, we're laughing. I should do the laugh.
I'm sure it did. I mean, I'm not going to disagree with you on that front. But anyway, thank you for battling through the pain, getting to your chair, and being on this podcast. So, but anyway, thank you so much as always. Thank you very much, Ralph. And obviously, we will be talking again next week. Actually, I am going to be going away the end of August, so I think we'll have, what is it, maybe next week, the week after, possibly. But then I'm actually going away, which is unbelievable. First holiday for 10 years.
Is. Where are you going?
So there you go. Don't laugh. Disneyland, Paris. So yeah.
Okay, and this ends our podcast. I can't make next week. It's fantastic.
Yeah. So it'll be good because I managed to get my passport came through, thank God, last week. So that was good because obviously passport is fairly useful for going.
There's another bottleneck. Yeah. Exactly. Oh,
anyway,
it is. I've heard.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you very much indeed.
Cool.
Thanks for everyone for listening.
Thanks, Peter, for having me.
Thank you. We'll be back again. Bye.
Cool. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.